Hey, what's up guys, Sir Emanon here, and welcome to another video. So I actually just wrapped up playing in a remote duel locals today, and I was kind of honestly on a whim. I woke up today and was like, you know what, I haven't played with physical cards in quite some time now, so let's change that with the good old reliable, Lunalight Tri-Brigade list that you see before you. So yeah, I made quite a number of substantial changes to the list since I last profiled for you guys about a week and a half or so ago, and those changes were really effective. I did pretty well today. I went 3-1. Finishing second place, only losing to Despia Adventurer of all decks. And I'm not going to lie, that is mostly because I do not know what the Despia cards do. I know that's pretty bad, considering that their structure deck's coming out relatively soon, so they're about to get really good. But cut me some slack, I'll get around to reading those cards eventually. But yeah, that loss was primarily due to matchup unfamiliarity rather than the deck underperforming or things of that nature. So that bodes pretty well for the build itself. I still don't think the deck is meta, but it definitely can compete with the best of them. My match wins were up against Virtual World, Brave Crankids, and Floowandereeze, so I think those are pretty good matchups, all things considered. If you guys do want to see any of those matches, by the way, I did record them thanks to the permission from my opponents, as well as Guardian Games, whose locals I did play in, and I'll leave their Discord link if you want to play in any of their remote duel tournaments. But yeah, if you want to see those matches, just let me know in the comments and I'll go ahead and bring that to you guys with commentary as usual. But let's just get started here without any further ado. I don't want to spend too much time going in depth, in before a 20-minute video anyways, but I explained a lot of the detail as far as how the deck is fundamentally meant to function. So if you missed the last profile, I'll leave a link to that in the description below for you guys to check out. But we're just going to be mostly talking about the changes and what worked, what didn't, things of that nature. So first off, we got 3 copies of Lunalight Cloudcheck for the Lunalight engine. I think this is very, very self-explanatory. You just have to open this card as much as you can because you're pulling all of your search power and your resources into accessing the 1 copy of Lunalight Tiger. So you want to make sure that you have both halves of the puzzle to be able to freely combo, and this is, probably the most accessible one, given that it's at 3 still. Next up, we have 2 copies of Lunalight Yellow Marten. She does pretty much everything that you want as far as just reusing Tiger and being an extender itself. No complaints here. It's the perfect ratio. Even if you banish it with your Tri-Brigades or with its own effect, it's fine because you can just bring it back off like Revel and stuff. Or you can bring it back with things like Emerald Bird, which I'll be honest, has been less and less good for me as of late. So I'm actually even thinking about cutting this card entirely. And I'll kind of run through my thought process here. So the initial intention behind keeping it in the list was not only to get more value off the redoer play, just on your turn 1 to be able to go into more rank 4s, but still keeping just another body as a threat. But more importantly, the idea was that, okay, if your Lunalight Tiger gets outed by something like Cosmic Cyclone or Ghost Ogre, which is more popular now, or a DPE, or just any way for it to get off the board, the idea was that, okay, either you go ahead and you use Emerald Bird when you detach off Redoer, because remember, Redoer detaches for effect, not for cost, and you get it back from your banish zone if it got hit by, like an Omen or a Cosmic Cyclone. Or you can do something very similar, and you can actually send the Lunalight Tiger that's face up in your extra deck if it was destroyed by your Lunalight Cloudcheck, which is an interaction that you probably should know if you're playing this deck. And then you can go ahead, do the same play, Emerald Bird, bring it back, and then you can go ahead and Marten bounce it, and then kind of just go on your merry way from that point. But what I realized is that doesn't come up because how are you actually getting Emerald Bird and another level 4 on your board when Tiger is not in your scale anymore? So like the only way you can possibly do it, like that doesn't require a billion hoops or hurdles or like drawing perfume, is like Fractal banish 2 to summon Berry Bloom, and then like you go ahead and banish this as one of the materials, and then you like pitch 2 to bring it back, and then you go redo it that way. But that's like so many steps, which is extremely impractical. The more practical way to do it is actually the card that I cut from the list for this tournament, which I actually am probably going to put back in, and that is the Lunalight Black Sheep. If you guys remember, I was playing this card as a mechanism to go ahead and just add back my Tiger from the graveyard, and it actually did come up where I missed it today in one of the matches actually up against the Despia player, because there was a point where it had a perfume in my hand that I top decked, and then like I could have actually gotten access to this card if I kind of did my graveyard setup a little bit differently with Cloudcheck. I could have expended one of the effects on getting the Tiger back into the graveyard. Because like my opponent popped it with the Guardian Chimera, which by the way is a crazy card out of Battles of Chaos. That card is really, really good in that deck. Just straight up Pot of Greed that pops cards. But yeah, I could have gotten potentially the Tiger back if I like got the graveyard set up, and then like I could have added it back off this. I probably still would have lost that game if I'm being honest here, but it's nice to have that extra potential avenue to be able to have recoverability, and like this is one of the best means to do so. Not to mention that like if you don't have, or if you haven't used your Tenki yet for whatever reason, like via your Tiger King. You can always get access to this and then get stuff back that way. It's potentially something that can come up. So yeah, you might see conceivably a list where I do 3, 2, 0, and then the 1 black sheep. So that's kind of something to think about. But yeah, we have 1 copy of Lunalight Tiger. Obviously, we're gonna play her. Can probably come back to 3, no problem, from being realistic. Because like even though this card's crazy, and even though a lot of the reason why like being 1 is so problematic is that it's hard to actually recover it, I don't actually think that having multiple Tigers in scale or like getting easier access to it more consistently is gonna actually bolster this deck to competitive or more meta tier status. It's a good deck. It definitely is capable, but it's not really near the top of the play in my opinion. We have 1 copy of Zephyros as the honorary Lunalight name, just another way to abuse Tiger, pretty self-explanatory. You'll notice that I cut Radius Wing from the list, and that is because primarily it was used to facilitate Y-Strix plays, because if you recall from my previous deck profile, I was not playing the rank up stuff, but I was still playing Y-Strix as a way to bait out hand traps. What I found recently is that a lot of people are just hand trapping the 4-Strix rather than holding for Y-Strix, which I do think, by the way, is correct, because if you recall, the idea was that, okay, if Y-Strix gets Ashed or Impermed or Veilered or things like that, you go ahead and just go, okay, Martin Bounce Tiger, Rescale Tiger, bring back Collider Chick, overlay into the Tiger King set Tenki, activate it, grab Fractal, use the whole Fractal line, get another Fractal, and then you can go ahead and, make the Tiger King and the Y-Strix become a copy of Farid, and you special the Tri-Brigade out of your hand to keep playing, and you can end on usually just at least Appaloosa Revolt, which is pretty good. But if you don't even make it to Y-Strix, what's the whole point? And oftentimes I found out I wasn't even getting there if I was to get hand trapped that early. So the better thing to do is to actually just go ahead and play a package that plays on hand traps better, which, spoiler alert, is just the DPE package, which I am playing. And you'll find that like that's just fine enough as well. It is a backup plan, not a flashy one, admittedly, but it does definitely get the job done. So yeah, given the fact that people were hand trapping this deck at like that specific point, it made it so that like it didn't make sense to play Y-Strix anymore, not to mention the fact that I had to kill Y-Strix or something to make space for the DPE package. So that did have to it did not manage to make the cut, I should say. But yeah, Zephyros by itself is fine for me. I have not missed Radius Wing at all. It is actually not a really good card to draw anyways, just like by itself, unless if like you have tries to work with it. So I really have not been missing it. Totally fine. We have 3 copies of the Lunalight Perfume, very, very staple, like super powerful card. And then we have 3 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. Something about the Lunalight strategy, with Tri-Brigade in particular, and the big glaring weakness of this build is that it plays really, really badly against Lancia. And that's a huge problem considering how Lancia is so popular that a lot of people are choosing to main deck it, myself included in this list, by the way. And so you'll find that like a lot of the times in order to get access to your Tiger, you have to like open the Foolish Goods to send like, your Perfume, but then you just play into Lancia anyways, not to mention that you're playing a whole other engine in Tri-Brigade that also loses to Lancia. So that is a huge, huge problem, and another reason why I decided to play DPE. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit, but yeah, you can kind of see like the motivation behind adding DPE to the list. One Serenade Dance, this loses a little bit less hard to Lancia if your opponent doesn't time it, but realistically, like, they are probably shotgunning Lancia game 1 to play around Enchantress, and then, like, you could also realistically just shotgun it to play around, like, Prosperity or whatever other cards. So, if your opponent waits for this to hit the grave and then they, like, Lancia, it's cool because you can chain it, but, I mean, realistically, your opponent is probably going to Lancia much sooner than that, and thus it is not going to be great if you open Foolish Goods, and that's your only way into Lunalight pieces. So, that is definitely an issue to think about moving forward. Next up, we have the Tri-Brigade stuff. So this didn't change too much. I just made one small change. So 3 Fractal, 2 copies of Nerval. I upped Karis to 2, which is the only change. This is because the second Karis does come up in grind scenarios. You do want to have it more. It's fine to open in your opening hand just in general, because it means that a lot of the times you actually do get to summon like one of the Tri-Brigades off of the Farragut, and you can carry summon itself to go and add DDL to your end board, which is pretty solid. It's also fine because like we are playing a higher concentration of Tri-Beasts to pitch anyways, as compared to like just regular Tri-Brigade, right? So I think overall it's fine. 1 copy of Kit still, and 1 copy of Revolt, which you definitely want to be ending on most of the time. Revolt is an essential part of your end board because this deck does still lose really hard to Droplet, Dark Ruler, things of that nature, and you want to have like somewhat of a fallback plan. It's not the greatest, but it does at least ensure that you have follow-up, which is really good because like by triggering Nerval, you get access to normal summon Tri-Brigade, banish 3 for Rugal, make access code and threaten game, which is how the majority of the games should go, provided that things are going your way. And this is a very, very good enabler of that, of course. So that is going to be it for the Tri-Brigade stuff. Next up are the two cards that kind of bridge both engines together and synergize with both, and that is the Tanky and the Foolish Burial. If Tanky was to get banned, then this deck would not really be playable in its current capacity, because Tiger King is so essential that you make it almost every single game. And setting Tanky to get access to mostly your Tri-Brigade package is really what's going to enable you to actually make a lot of your plays. And then Foolish is great as a way to send, you can send Kit, you can send Collider Chick, you can send Martin, you can send whatever you need pretty much. Just great as an extender, as a way to play past hand traps, etc., etc. Next up is the Fusion Destiny package, everyone's favorite. Oh boy, we got the 2 Fusion Destiny and the 2 bricks. So yeah, I already mentioned before some of the reasons why this is good. I'll just kind of reiterate right here. So when you get hand trapped, you'll find out all the times you can't really go for your big kind of like big wombo combo plays involving Y-Strix, because like it's just not feasible or possible. And so you want something that's a bit more flexible, more generic, that you can go into as a fallback that's independently good by itself and also allows you to get more follow-up, and this fits that bill perfectly. Additionally, you also lose a bit less hard to Lancia. Lancia still obviously hurts tremendously, but you can at least mitigate some of the damage there and hope that DPE with the hand traps gets you there, which, let's be real, all the time it does, just because of how ridiculous DPE is. And overall, I think that like even though you're playing 2 bricks, it's still fine, because like the deck inherently is actually fairly consistent, just because like the tri package itself is consistent and it helps kind of like weave your way into the Lunalight stuff. And worst case, I mean, you're just playing DPE Tri-Brigade, which is not a bad deck right now either. So that is it for the DPE package, of course. And then the remaining 10 cards I swapped from board breakers into hand traps, because it's funny because I mentioned in that initial deck profile, I was like, by reading the format could be entirely wrong, and you guys can all laugh at me. And here I am laughing myself, because I could not have been more wrong. As many of you guys correctly pointed out in the comment section, playing 0 hand traps into a Scythe-dominated format is pretty much asking to lose. And so I did not want to have that vulnerability in my list, which was pretty much just like, it was just a boneheaded idea. So we're on hand traps now, even though it does play worse into the Adventurer package, which natively invalidates all the hand traps, and that makes deck building frustrating. The fact of the matter is you have to make concessions to the thing that will automatically beat you, which is Scythe, in exchange for something that might beat you depending on how strong or weak your hand is, being just a singular negate from Griffin. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So 3 Ash, 3 copies of Ghost Ogre, the 3 main deck Delancia, and then as the 10th hand trap and the 40th card in the list, it's 1 copy of Imperm. This is an interesting hand trap lineup. I don't know how to feel about it, if I'm being completely honest, so let's kind of just talk about these. Ash has been even more mediocre than it historically is. Like, everyone knows it's kind of a low impact hand trap. Like, you drop it and you don't expect it to end your opponent's turn a lot of the time, but it's enough, hopefully, for them to be hindered to where their board is like more manageable. But in the age of the Adventurer package, even that purpose isn't guaranteed, because like if you Ash Enchantress, never mind the fact that they could just hard draw the right anyways, like you have their main engine to be able to just play anyways. They just normal summon Touring Scales, they just summon a Prank Kid, and it's tough. Same deal if like you Ash the Fateful, it's like similar, but like you don't get punished by them drawing right, but then like they get access to Draco back, which could be problematic later down the line as well. And it's just like a whole ordeal. And then like Ash is like really good in simplified game states, but apart from that, I'm not convinced on this card right now, but it is just generic. Ogre has been hit or miss as well, but for a different reason. It's because either it's like the best hand trap in the entire game, or it just rots in your hand doing nothing. There are times where like you can really just impactfully like hit Appaloosas, you can hit like Griffin Rider, of course, and like there's a lot of really, really cool things in the meta right now that like this hits, but there are other times where, again, like you're in a matchup where Ogre doesn't get any value and you're just really sad about it. And this deck is not one that makes use of E-Telly, so there's not as much innate synergy with the like main engine, right? Lancia, though, on the other hand, has been like the one hand trap that has consistently been doing pretty well for me this format, to the point where I've started to main deck it. And honestly, it's pretty good. Like, it's not obviously good against every single engine out there, but I mean, the NX that it's good against, it's phenomenal against. And that, I think, is what makes it count. It's one of the only hand traps that independently by itself can impact the turn to where like your opponent might actually like has, which is a big deal, which none of the other hand traps are able to do. Like every other defensive card requires multiple cards to function or to like hinder your opponent effectively. But I think Lancet is one of the exceptions to that, even though it's not guaranteed to be that way. It has the highest percentage chance of that outcome happening, and I think that that is something to be desired. Imperm, I can't really gauge this card super accurately in this list at least, just because like it was the 40th card, it's a one-off. I didn't draw it often, but I do feel like this would probably have more utility than like just bulking up on Ash Ogre, stuff like that. So I think this ratio would shift around. I think these are still like probably the better hand traps to main deck. There could be a case for Gamma, especially like people continue to shotgun Lancia, which is a trend to play around Enchantress. And so if that's something that I observe to happen like still against me, then that might be a point where like, I just start playing Gamma in the main deck, and that could be really good. But yeah, as of right now, not really sure. This hand trap lineup definitely could use room for improvement. Let me know what you guys think about the hand traps right now in the current format. I would love to hear your thoughts about which ones you guys are choosing to run, if any. That's it for the 40 card main. Next up is the extra deck. So we got a copy of 4 Strix for Xyz, one copy of Tiger King, extremely essential to your combos. 1 Redoer, which is also cuttable in the same vein as Emerald Bird. If I am cutting Emerald Bird, then like that's even more reason to cut this card. But even still with Emerald Bird, like this just doesn't come up very often as either part of the end board or as part of like, just a way to get back into the game. Some people were suggesting me to play Nyarla over this card. I'm not gonna lie, I just couldn't find my Nyarla before today's tournament. And I kind of still want to mess around with it, but to be fair, like the premise of like activating Emerald Bird or Yellow Martin from like detaching for effect, it's useful, but it's not like it's hardly the the be all end all. I do think it is cool that like Nyarla can put stuff like Omen or Nerval under it and get value later on, but like this typically is more of a turn 1 thing anyways, and like if you do that turn 1, like you're going through hard ones per turn, so it doesn't matter a lot. Like it's cool that you can still link it away under try restrictions because it copies the type of it of like whatever is you attach under it with its effect. But I don't know, overall I think this slot could easily be like an Amraj, which is not in the list, and that's something that I would probably consider playing just because it does come up. We have 1 copy of Abyss Dweller, still like one of the MVPs of the rank 4 pool. Really, like rank 4s are a bit outdated, if I'm being honest. It's like a reason to play an engine / a deck, but if there's one rank 4 that's really good right now, it's Dweller. We have 1 copy of Tornado Dragon as a hedge against back row decks, and honestly this card was pretty useful, so can't complain too much. It's just nice to be able to like clear the back row, especially because Darumidal is a lot weaker when you don't have 3 Tiger or 3 Tenki. Next up for the DPE package, we have DPE and Verte. It's DPE and Verte. Next up, we have the Link monsters. We got DDL, we got Farigit, we have Bear Bloom, we have Rugal, 2 copies of Shuraig, Appaloosa, and Access Code rounding out the 15. So these all came up in their own way. This could be a Doom Eagle in theory, but the fact of the matter is that I do hard bait this a fair amount, especially in weaker hands, and you don't want to like, you don't want to risk that situation. Like Doom Eagle putback effect is really good, don't get me wrong, especially against like opposing DPs, which is valid. But this card is like just good as a try name to be able to like hard make in like those kinds of scenarios. I am waiting for the day where I can reborn a Tiger that somehow managed to find its way into the grave with this effect and bounce it back. Maybe one day, like a man can dream, right? Everything else though has come up a lot. I did mention Amirage. I would like to play Amirage in the list. I might cut the redoer for it. Amirage is good not only, of course, with the Kit or Nerval, but also good if you open specifically Martin plus Perfume, which happens to me a lot for some reason. And so, like, before we didn't have a good play to actually convert that, but now that we have DPE, we have Verte, so that's pretty good. Next up, we have the side deck, which admittedly was a bit thrown together at the last second. So we have 1 copy of Imperm as the 15th card in the extra, or rather the side, so you can kind of notice a trend here. Again, this could maybe be a main deck card, so we might replace this with something else. 3 copies of Nibiru, which is fine. I didn't really actually resolve it in today's tournament, but it's just like a decent side card, I feel. 3 Cosmic, which has been performing really well. Not enough to the point where we would main deck it, but it is making me rethink the value of this card in the format. It is another board breaker that, yes, it needs another card for it to like really be good. Because of course, by itself against Scythe, it's still not enough due to the fact that Griffin Rider is a card. So like similar to a lot of other hand traps or board breakers besides like Dark Ruler, Droplet, or mostly Droplet if I'm being honest. This does require supplements, but a lot of cards do right now. It's kind of just how the game is. Like you just need to draw 2 hand traps or 2 like board breakers, or like 1 of each depending on the combination. Speaking of board breakers, 3 copies of Dark Ruler. I don't own Droplet, so there's that. But this card is decent. I don't know how insane it is. It's all right against certain matchups like Sword Soul, where you don't need as many hand traps against. But I don't know. This card is like really, really weird, and it like continues to like waffle between being excellent and being completely dead. So I'm not really sure what the verdict is there. 3 copies of Tactics. This was Judgment in a previous list, and honestly, I just forgot that I was playing Judgment before. Probably is better. I didn't actually draw this card though that often, so it's not really like I can comment effectively on it. And then we have 1 copy of Duster and then 1 copy of Reboot for the back row matchups. So that is it for this list here. Honestly, this is about as good as I think the list will be, apart from these changes that I mentioned that I would make before. I think I've gotten the concept of the deck down quite well, and I will definitely be making the combo tutorial video. I've been working on it. It takes a long time though, just because of the way that I like to do it. You guys know that by now. But yeah, I really like the deck. I do think the DPE engine is solid as a way to cover for the deck's weaknesses. One of them being Lancia, which is a huge liability, and I think the DPE engine is a great job in trying to solve for one of those weaknesses. But that's going to be it. I will be playing around with other Lunalight builds as well as other decks in general this format. I just need to get around to that. But that's going to be it for the video, guys. Thank you so much. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, I'll catch you in the next video. See you guys.